Hello and welcome back to El Podo, the Primera Ref show. I'm your host, Nick Bell, back in the hot seat once again and delighted to be joined by my co-host, Liam Bambridge. How are you getting on, Liam?
Not so bad, thank you. Not so bad. Not in Spain this past weekend, but looking forward to my next trip in a couple of weeks. So, yeah, it's plenty of football to watch anyway. Even though I wasn't actually in Spain, I managed to watch some of it over the weekend at home, so that was great.
Oh, that's not doing too bad then, is it? That's really good. I'm out in Spain in a couple of weeks as well, but for a family holiday, and I'm trying to navigate my way around to see whether I can squeeze some stuff in, especially with it being around the La Liga Retro Football weekend. I'm actually quite jealous from a Primera Ref perspective that they're not joining in. I thought there was going to be some more close collaboration, Liam, if I'm being honest. This feels like we're being left out a little bit, doesn't it?
It does a bit, doesn't it? Yeah, there's plenty of historic teams in Primera F who could have provided a retro shirt, and then we're told there's a closer sort of collaboration now, aren't we, between the top two leagues and the third division, so to speak. And then I've noticed that the fixtures have come out today actually for that Easter weekend and just after the Segunda ones, which makes you feel like they are all sort of working a bit closer together. But when it comes to retro shirt weekend, we've been left out. You're right.
I know, yeah. I wish I could get my hands on, and I have got my eye on a Merida one, but when they would have been, is it CP Merida, when they were last in La Liga from 1997? That would have been a great remake if they could have got that one away. But alas, we'll just have to imagine what it's like, Liam, with those clubs. Just for a bit of news to begin with, why don't we start? 2 midweek games which were rearranged after the storm that swept through Andalusia a few weeks ago. 2 big games as well, really, both in Grupo Dos, one at the top and one at the bottom, Liam.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, Real Murcia and Marbella. Who would have tipped that as being the one that's at the bottom, and Antequera Algeciras being the one at the top? You'd have expected the other way around, wouldn't you, completely? But you're absolutely right. Almost a relegation 6-pointer. I'm not sure Marbella are playing relegation 6-pointers anymore. They're so far adrift. But yeah, they went to the Nueva Condomina and drew 1-1. And that result at that stage took Real Murcia out of the bottom 5 and pushed Gymnastic de Tarragona into it in the El Mauli. A good win for Antequera, wasn't there?
Yes, it was beating Algeciras by 2-0. Algeciras, who were looking quite impervious at one point, seemingly just rocking back into a bit of null form at the moment. But yeah, it's again quite a good result for Abraham Bazzi's side, as they have had this unlikely assault on the playoffs recently. I know they made the playoffs last season, Liam, but they've really got themselves into a competitive position, haven't they? So yeah, it'd be interesting to see which of those two will end up in that top 5 come the end of the season. Now, I know there's a player that you know a lot about that has been training with Ponferradina. I saw him a lot down in Primera Ref when he was with Deportivo La Coruña, but it's former Las Palmas man. It is Christian Mafulu. I imagine you've watched him a lot as one of the anchors of Spanish Segunda, Liam.
Yeah, very much so. I was impressed with it, Las Palmas, and he's not that old either. I think he's only early 30s, but hasn't had a club since last time. I think he left Depor last summer. I don't know if he had a long injury or something, because he didn't appear to have played an awful lot last season in Segunda for them. So I guess the issue here is that he can't be anywhere near match fit, I wouldn't have thought. So give it a try in Ponferrada and see how it works out under Medinafti, and then maybe in due course he'll become part of the plans going forward. But it always seems strange to me that players, I suppose if they miss that window, then it can be difficult to get back in again, can't it? If they decide to hold out for a deal and don't get one at the end of August, then they do often have to wait. But as a free agent, I'm not quite sure what the rules are. I would have thought he could have signed for somebody in October or November. But whatever the case is, he is finally back on a football field. And back in his day, he was a very good player. And I don't think his day was that long ago. So he could be a decent signing for Ponf if he's able to get up to speed and take on board what he needs to do to be a big part of that side.
Yeah, and he was a very big part of the side, the Depor side that got promoted out of this division as well. So he kind of knows what he's doing, doesn't he? Which is a real, opportunity for clubs that are in the promotion push sort of territory. And I think it's also interesting to see sort of the caliber of players that are now all of a sudden willing to play in Primera Ref a bit more. This, go back 5, years ago when it first all began. You wouldn't have had players like Umfulu or, Yanis Romani, who'd be another one potentially you could put in that category. Dropping down to third tier to play for, massive clubs in their own respect. But it just wasn't the thing. They used to wait for sort of like the with respect, the dregs of the Spanish Segunda who were in relegation battles, didn't they? But it's just not the same anymore, is it? So can only be a good thing.
I suppose you're right because they kind of see it as a possible route back into Segunda, don't they? In the sense that we've seen players probably younger on the whole who've made the step from Primera F to Segunda, so that gap has clearly closed since they went for this 2-division format. It used to be, of course, 4 divisions under Segunda. Then with that, the standard has clearly risen, and so I suppose they think, well, we'll drop down to come back up again. I think Alex Balboa is a classic example at Lugo. I feel like if Lugo don't go up, I'd be surprised if he went to Segunda next year. So and I think teams will be looking at him in Segunda and going, he's a decent player. He's clearly capable of making that step up. He's played Segunda already, of course. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that kind of stigma about dropping down to semi-professional football is slightly reduced since we went to this new format.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, we lost a bastion of top Primera ref quality going into the Spanish Segunda during the transfer window as well. So you are absolutely right. That gap is definitely starting to close, which is a great thing for this league, but also a great thing for Spanish football as well. Speaking of, should we get into some Grupo Uno games, Liam? Because it's been a couple of weeks since I've done this, but this was a cracking weekend for Grupo Uno games, not necessarily Grupo Dos games.
Yeah, we're a bit skinny on goals, weren't we, this week? I think we knew the Grupo Dos games were going to be intriguing rather than goal fest. Celta Fortuna Tenerife there in Group 1, obviously, was always going to have to be one of our 3 because it was second versus first. It was really the last chance for Celta Fortuna to have any hope, I think, really, of catching Tenerife. They had to win this game. They went into it, I think, 10 points behind, but of course, they lost the first game 4-0, so they had to win it even to be essentially 8 points behind because, in Spain, the goal average is the key, not goal difference. And it was a miserable night in Vigo. It was chucking it down, as it quite often is in Galicia. And the 400 Tenerife fans were at least undercover. But I don't know what you thought, Nick. They played this game in Balaidos. Could they not have found somewhere undercover a little bit closer to the pitch? They parked them right at the top corner of one of the stands. I thought it was a bit unnecessary.
Yeah, they always do as well, don't they? And then obviously, Tenerife will travel well, and there's been other teams that have played at Barrios as well that have been sort of stationed up there. But it feels a bit unnecessary when you've got, with respect to Celta Fortuna, anywhere else in the stadium you could possibly sit. The sea of blue chairs, that you could have picked from. It's quite scaling, isn't it? But if there was any Celta Fortuna fans there, I couldn't really make masses of crowds out, for me, and perfectly honestly. But they were treated, weren't they, in this game? Because I actually thought the young boys from Vigo did quite well in this match against a team that is supposed to be all imperious, winning it by April. And they made it really competitive, didn't they?
They did, I thought they started really well. I liked Noel Lopez on the left-hand side. He was linking up with David Ramos really well as well, and there's a lot of threat down that side, and I thought they might get a goal from that outlet. They didn't. And then the first half kind of petered out a bit after that. Then it was much in the last 15, 20 minutes of the first half. And then, of course, they started the second half really well. Ancho Rodriguez, lovely goal, strode forward from midfield and tucked it in the corner. Really good finish from him. But there was a really key moment for me just after that. I don't know what you thought, Nick.
Yeah, I think it was, after that goal, which I must say, I don't like filiales, as we know. We both share that sentiment, but this was a really nice sort of like dance through sort of stride, slot in the bottom corner, wasn't it? You kind of had to tip your hat to him for that kind of finish. But yes, certainly straight afterwards, this key moment where there's a brilliant block from Landazuri to ensure that Hugo Gonzalez doesn't double the lead for Celta Fortuna. And that's quite key, isn't it, for this game, where we've seen a lot of Tenerife this season. We've seen a lot of Tenerife win games 4-0, 3-0. We've also seen a lot of times where Tenerife will come back from behind and snatch a late win at the very death. And I tell you what, you don't get much later than this, do you?
No, you don't. They just kept going, didn't they? I mean, they're a good side. They're always going to keep the heads up, aren't they? And then they knew, really, I think if they drew this game, they were pretty much done as far as winning the title was concerned. And they did find an equaliser in the 4th minute at a time. A little bit of good fortune, crossing from the left. De Miguel slid in with Ancho Rodriguez, the aforementioned goal scorer. Ball cannons off the keeper. Bounces back onto Rodriguez. He can't do anything about it. Rolls into the net. And I think at that moment, really, any lingering doubts about Grupo Uno being won by Tenerife probably disappeared, don't you think?
Yeah, it's interesting to see because, and I know we've spoken about this, but sometimes there's a rhetoric where the football isn't necessarily flattering, but they keep grinding out results, don't they? And this, I don't know if it's maybe some lingering hangover from last season from a Tenerife perspective, but it's kind of like they're waiting for it to go wrong. Does that make sense? But at this
Yeah, very
minute, where
much so. Yeah, I think there is that sense, isn't there? That and I suppose we had it in that group last year, didn't we? With Cultural Enesa, they did have a big lead, and they did blow it, and they were very dominant for a lot of the season. And then about this time, so I suppose, yeah, there is that history of Grupo Uno leaders or runaway leaders being very nearly caught in the run-in. But no, I don't know what it is. I think people seem to be quite negative about Tenerife, despite the fact they're 10 points clear, even from in their own fan base. You see quite a lot of negative comments about them, but they can do no more than be 10 points clear and essentially, as you say, 11 points clear, because Delta Fortuna have lost the goal average, of course. I don't think there's any way they're getting caught, only 10 games to go. And yeah, we'll just have to see. I suppose the only issue is how will they cope when they get back into Segunda. We know that the gap is not as significant as it used to be, but there is a gap, of course, and can they adapt and make sure they don't end up slipping back down into Primera Federacion at the end of next season. But yeah, I think it's done and dusted, regardless of the skepticism and, as you say, some people thinking something's about to go wrong. I don't think anything is going to go wrong here. I think they'll win it quite comfortably eventually.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think the adage that they're going to be up by April, which is is incredible for this league, will likely happen. Being perfectly honest, I can't really see them doing it more. And Celta Fortuna as well. I think, especially as Celta Vigo go deep into the season, they've obviously got a chase on for not just a European spot in the league, but also European football with the knockout stages of the Europa League. I think they've got a second leg away in Lyon this week or next week. But those top players that we keep talking about for Celta Fortuna are going to start getting rotated in a lot more. And we see that every season with the filiales, don't we? Some of the top players start to get bedded in at the back end of the season into the first team squad, either to be integrated into the team for next season or sold on during the summer as a bit of a shop window. So again, I can always see that gap between the top two getting bigger as well. Unlike you, Liam, back-to-back filiales chat here. This was a really big surprise to me that you went for a Lugo Real Madrid Castilla for your second game.
I kind of had to, and I thought that I was going to get a good result from this one, but actually ended up being an evening to forget for the home side. They'd only lost, I think, once at home all season. I think it was against Unionistas, if I remember rightly. So I was quite confident with this one then. Real Madrid Castilla have been on a really poor run, and this one ended up exactly as I wasn't hoping. Lugo 0, Real Madrid Castilla 4. Interesting that they didn't start well. Marc Martinez got lucky early on. He raced off his line, got caught in no man's land. And the guy who lobbed it over him and the ball just bounced up and over the bar, Ortega, he's an interesting one. And I think this is, again, talking about players being promoted from the filial to the first team. Ortega has come up, hasn't he, from the C team. He's been playing obviously a lower level in the pyramid, and also playing in the UEFA Youth League. I think he's only 18. He is an absolute unit, isn't he, Nick?
Yeah. He reminds me a lot of sort of like, if I was to put him like a Stevan Jovic, if you remember him from a few years ago, sort of like that build. But really, really pacey as well. But you can clearly see he's an intelligent football player with the way he tried to lob the goalkeeper when Martinez came on and rushing. And, he was rewarded for his endeavour as well, because he got off the mark at Primera F level quite shortly after his attempted lob. And then Syria added a second just before then. So again, in this, it looked to me that Real Madrid Castilla had hit a gear that they've been missing the last few weeks, haven't they, Liam? Because it was, as much as it pains me to say, sometimes it was quite hypnotising, really good on-the-deck football, wasn't it?
Yeah, it certainly was. I mean, they were really comfortable in this game. You say, against a side they've been really good at home. They made them look very, very average. They scored 2 more in the second half. They've only won 2 of the last 10, including this win. But, it just shows how tight this league is, that result actually moved them back into the top 5 on Saturday night. And they're still well in contention. And I think, as you said, Thiria has only just come in the winter transfer window. He's just getting up to speed over these first few weeks. Ortega, as I say, has come up from the C team. I think things will start to change, unfortunately, for the better for this team. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if over the next few weeks they push towards the top of the table. They're not going to catch Tenerife, of course, but I fear that they may solidify a playoff spot over the next few weeks if they can carry on playing like this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And then next season, who knows what's going to happen with the manager's job and all that jazz, and who else is going to come in? It's the same, spinning door for Real Madrid Castilla, isn't it? Which is always dramatic. Anyway, less of that. Hopefully, Lugo can bounce back because obviously that's a bit of a blood in there. But I think again they'll have their own aspirations. They've got some really good players there, so hopefully they'll get back on track next weekend. Down to Extremadura, Liam. Cacereño 0, Ponferradina 0. Not a classic, this one, was it?
No, it wasn't. To be fair, when I picked it, I thought it was an important game. I didn't necessarily think we were going to get a goal fest. Ponferradina, of course, renowned for keeping clean sheets over the last couple of months. Cacereño, not great at home, to be honest. Actually better on their travels, I think, than they are at home. They deserve to win it overall, the home side. Having said that, 2 efforts where they nearly scored, and I don't think either were intended. I think there was an effort from Josera that hit the post. He's hooked it back from right on the byline. It smashed against the near post, and then later on, Diego Gomez, the centre forward, out on the left flank. I think it's a cross. He might claim it's a shot. I think it's a cross. It cannons off the bar and to safety. So yeah, I mean, overall, I thought they had most of the attacking intent in this game, but really overall. If they'd scored for one of those, I think it would have been a bit fortunate. But yeah, if you were a boxing match, they wanted points, but clearly it's not. And so they had to settle for 0-0. At Ponfe, I don't know. I mean, just disappointing for me going forward. Very little, really, overall. And I don't know what you think, but for me, clean sheet for Prieto, fair enough. Another one to add to his long collection, but it felt like not a great result for either team.
No, I'd 100% agree on that one. I think, Cacereño would have liked to have made this one count because, as we've mentioned, we're coming into the final knock-ins of the season, aren't they? And they're obviously still in danger of, being relegated back to Segunda Ref. But same for Ponfe as well. They'll be looking to want to string some, wins together to maybe put them in that picture. But it feels more and more like they're going to be, sort of like mid-table club, which I think, to be fair, at the beginning of the season is where we kind of put them, didn't we, really, in the grand scheme of things. If there's anything I took away from this game, Liam, it is my admiration for the stained glass windows at the Estadio Príncipe Felipe. I was really admiring them during the highlights. I was like, oh, that's good. I don't really care what's going on the pitch. Isn't that nice? So, yeah.
There's a building site behind one goal, isn't there? Rightly, probably, yeah. It's quite a serious work going on there. I mean, listen, I think it's a tricky one, isn't it? And we always want to see teams come up and stay in this division because it feels like what you want. You don't want teams to have worked so hard to get here and then disappear off 12 months later. But yeah, I do worry about Cacereño. I just think they haven't got enough going forward. And Ponferradina, I don't know. I mean, there's so many teams that we've said that over the last few weeks. So many teams in and around the top 5 in both groups, but especially in Group All now, that you never know, they could still make it. But yeah, to me, they're just lacking a bit. And I don't really know why they brought in a few forwards, but they still feel a bit light on goals. So we'll see what happens. Talking light on goals, we're off to Grupo Dos now, Nick. Starting with Cartagena 0, Teruel 0.
Yeah, I can't thank Tom more for this one in terms of watching these games back. But yeah, Cartagena 0, Teruel 0. You know what? On the face of it, that is a 0-0, but in reality, it's actually quite a brilliant point away for the Aragonese side. And you can see from the start, Liam, that Vicente Barrios went with a plan, and that plan was to come away with a point because it's not often you see a 5-4-1 formation in Primera F, is it? It's defensive tactics to the hill, isn't it? That one.
It is, and I can understand that, really. Obviously, they are in the top 5, and then they want to stay in the top 5. Cartagena, one of the teams trying to break into that top 5, and you go away from home, you want to pick up a point. I mean, I didn't think they were potentially as negative as I expected them to be, really. They did put some passes together, and they did try and threaten the Cartagena goal. But to be honest, it was all about Ruben Galvez in their goal, wasn't it? I mean, I thought he was really excellent.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of brilliant one-on-one saves to stop Cartagena going for head, both from Ramani, if I remember rightly. Cartagena did have the goal in the net early doors, so Ruben Serrano. And I tell you what, the fact that they managed to catch this on an FVS check, I actually have to applaud it for once because it is definitely ruled offside there. It's like the flick on, isn't it, from the corner? And Serrano's just made his run a little bit too quickly. And perfectly, called back, and on the face of it, in the result in the end, a well-deserved catch. And I thought this one, like you say, to be fair, I completely agree with you from the 5-4-1 perspective. It was more about trying to catch Cartagena on the break, wasn't it? But ultimately, it was just wave after wave of Cartagena attack, which Teruel weathered perfectly, in my opinion.
Yeah, they did. They did well, but as I say, Galway was a big part of that, wasn't it? They did, I think, Teruel have the ball in net once, didn't they? But again, it was offside. It was the right call. Biggest disappointment, of course, of this game was Teddy going off injured after half an hour. Absolutely gutted about that. He's been out, obviously, for quite a while. Come back in, scored a goal recently, a crucial goal, in fact, and was involved in another one that ended up being an own goal. So he's had a real impact in the last couple of games and then gone after half an hour against his former club as well. He was at Cartagena early in his career. So gutted for him, but overall, really pleased so well. But I think probably overall, although they'll be happy with it, Cartagena will certainly see this as an opportunity lost, won't they?
Yeah, exactly. You've just mentioned about how close the chasing packs are in both groups are to making sort of like the playoff picture. And Cartagena will definitely want to be in that playoff picture coming in the season. And this was a chance for them to, close that gap to, I think, about 2 points. So again, they'll be looking to dust themselves down after this week. But again, I can't help but, give a nod to Teruel. We made our predictions at the start of the season, Liam, and I don't know if we put them dead last, but they were certainly down there in our estimations. And this is a club that is punching well above its weight. And I'm sure you won't want me to say this out loud, but could be, if they stay in this position, the only contender to be Aragonese candidates for Segunda football next season as well, which I think if you had said that a few years ago, Liam, that's an absolutely mad statement, isn't it, given the size of Real Zaragoza and obviously the candid nature of Huesca as well, who are both in relegation trouble.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, amazing that people have taken to the local nut house, wouldn't they? If you'd said that a few years ago, Teruel might be the only team in Segunda next year from Malaga. Yeah, that's absolute madness, isn't it? But yeah, fair play, and they are in and about it, and yeah, they went here with quite defensive attitude, and so they should. It's a good point where Cartagena, and they'll take that, and Cartagena get no closer to them. And they're one game nearer the end of the season and still in the playoff spot. So fair play to them. I'm afraid, Nick, we picked between. Well, Tom obviously chose nothing to do with me, all his fault. But I actually thought this was quite a good call. Again, I didn't expect a goal fest here. Algeciras obviously had lost the previous 2 games on the road in their mammoth road trip they've been on for the last week. But yeah, I thought it would be an interesting one. And I think it was. I think Alcorcon 0, Algeciras 0 sounds grim. And of course, we know Alcorcon just love drawing and they're pretty good at it, over the season. But I thought it was a decent game overall, especially second half.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you there. I think in the first and the second halves, the build-up play for both sides, was really, really good. You saw some very intricate passing football, some really good passages of play. I think just as of late for certainly Algeciras, but maybe even longer term for Alcorcon, they're just blunt in attack, aren't they? And you could see that when they were kind of bereft of confidence in some places. When you would hope that they'd stay on their feet and take the shot. There was a very, very soft FVS check for a penalty when an Alcorcon player went down in the box, and it's just like, you'd have done better if you stayed on your feet doing that. And like I say, it felt like it was a bit rinse and repeat for both sides. Kind of the only excitement of any note, like from a headline point, is the red card in this match, Liam. Sort of like the Juan Garcia dismissal for a second yellow. He's kind of just got in for a 50-50, hasn't he? But you can't do that, can you?
It's such a hard one, isn't it? Because the ball's played in from the left. And listen, he's a centre forward. It's 0-0. It's about, 15, 20 minutes to go. He's got to go for it. And he doesn't make contact with it. And if he scores the goal, nobody's sending him off for cannoning into the keeper on the follow through, is he? But I thought he got a little touch on it as well. I thought he didn't quite make contact with it. He made a little bit of contact. He didn't make the contact he wanted with it. But it's so hard, isn't it? Because, he cannons into the keeper. I suppose it has to be a second yellow. But how else is he supposed to go for that ball? I get that he's going to make contact with the keeper inevitably, but he's got to try and score a goal. He's a centre forward, 8 yards out in a 0-0 draw, right in front of goal. He's got to go for it. But, once there is contact, once he doesn't score and he makes more contact with Gaithka Ayesa than the ball, I suppose it has to happen. But and then we had this bizarre situation where they reviewed it, didn't they? Yes. They reviewed it for a possible penalty. I mean, ridiculous, because of course that's the silly thing about it, because it's not a straight red. You can't actually challenge it. It's a second yellow. So they found an excuse by saying, could we have a penalty, please? Never, ever going to be a penalty. So absolute desperation there to try and keep Juan Garcia on the pitch. Didn't work. Referee sent him off. And after that, Alcorcon kind of dominated, didn't they? And really should have won it in those last few minutes.
Yeah, they really should have done. There was a couple of opportunities where there was a header back towards the back post, which was just out of reach for, I think, for Vladis, kind of like scuffing the top of his head rather than directing it. And then there was also one where they headed it against a crossbar, and 9 times out of 10, any ball that hits the crossbar, Liam, it drops down, it goes on the right side of the line, doesn't it? And I looked at this replay several times, and I tell you what, you cannot find a more perfectly straight ricochet off a bar if you went looking in any top league in Europe this weekend. It is a 90-degree angle finish. And again, it's just another chance that goes begging for Alcocon, who have been so bereft of goals this season. We've spoken about Mariano at the start of the season, how he burst out the traps. We spoke about Vladis, who's obviously got this massive move to Cadiz in the summer to go and play Segunda football. At the minute, if I'm in charge of Cadiz, which could well be me soon, Leave it might be my turn. I'd be thinking, actually, don't I really fancy bringing this lad in? He's not really bringing home the pudding, is he, at the minute?
Not at all. No, it's been disappointing. You say Mariano was excellent on the season, scored for months now, and he had a really good chance in this game. Not a really good chance. He made it out enough, to be fair. Good effort, smacked it towards the corner, and good save from the keeper. But yeah, it's really bizarre. I know there's a lot of criticism there has been for a long time with Pablo Alvarez, isn't the coach, and people seem to want to get rid of him every week, and they stick with him week after week. And yeah, I don't know. He's still not a million miles. I think it's like 5 points off the players, 4 points off the relegation zone. They're still, if there is a mid-table in Grupo Dos, they're stuck in the middle of it more or less. And yeah, disappointing. Bathco was delighted, of course. He'd had 2 defeats on the road, and their away form isn't good. Alcacer has only picked up 10 points in the road all season. Their strength is on their own patch and with a Mirador, so I suppose he had to be happy with that. But yeah, I think they could both have done this, like the Catalana Ponferrada game, isn't it? They could both have done with a win from this one. A big game down in the southeast to finish off with the last. You got some goals, Nick. Hercules 2, Real Murcia 0.
Yeah, this was a really good game as well, actually. Proper derby between two proper, sleeping giant territory kind of sides, aren't they? Though I must say, the home crowd for the Estadio Jose Rico Perez, quite small for this game. In comparison to what we've seen Real Murcia do at the Nueva Condomina, where they filled it with 30,000 people, I thought we might get a few more Alicatanos into this match, but no dice. However, Murcia travelled really, really well for this one, didn't they? A packed out corner, full end in red. It was really cool to see. And the away side, nearly went ahead early doors, except from a brilliant one-on-one save from Blazic. It was a really good shot-stopping moment, wasn't it? And, that could have been the chance for Murcia, couldn't it, Liam? Because after that, it kind of went all the other way.
Yeah, Blasic is a really interesting one. I mean, he's come in since I think you were last on the show, more or less. He's only been in about 3 or 4 weeks. He's only in the team initially because Carlos Abad got appendicitis and had to have an emergency operation just before a game. I think the day before a game or something. And I think he'd already travelled up to the away game, and he couldn't play in it because he'd already been taken to hospital. And Blasic's come in. His background is, I think he's been in Cologne's reserves over in Germany. And in that one of the first games he played, I remember Tom saying, well, we were both a bit dubious about whether he could have been a bit brave as an anti-care, if I remember rightly. You could call it half a mistake at the very least. But since then, he's been absolutely brilliant. And it's amazing because Carlos Abad is, for me, one of the best keepers in either Grupo. And right now, he's sat on the bench. He's not getting back in, Nick, because Blazic is playing out his skin. I mean, I saw him live the previous weekend against Atletico Madrid. It wasn't a great game, but again, in that game, he made 3 or 4 great saves. In this game as well, he's made several really, really good saves. And to be honest, Real Murcia, who haven't been great in recent weeks, I thought they were a bit unlucky in this one, really. I thought they played all right. And on another day, they would have won. But Blazic was absolutely determined to keep a clean sheet, wasn't he?
Yeah, it really was. And like you say, I think the key differences between these two sides for me in this match was there's a noticeable hesitation about Real Murcia at the minute. It's kind of like they're scared to make a mistake, and then what ultimately happens is they make that mistake, and that was certainly the case with the opening goal, wasn't it? Where I think it's Gazaniga throws the ball out into sort of like the centre midfield, and ordinarily when you would want to turn out and find a pass quickly, the pause is there. And he's immediately set upon. And when you get Alberto Torreira into a one-on-one situation, there's only going to be one result, isn't there? And this is a really, really nice finish. And again, I had to look into this because I hadn't noticed that Alberto Torreira signed for Hercules. This is a good striker to sign if you're looking to get yourselves into the playoffs, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a really interesting when he came in the January window and he hasn't played. I mean, he was playing out in the Costa Rican Premier League, would you believe? I remember him leaving, I think it was Cordoba he left, wasn't to go out there. And he'd done really well at Cordoba. And then there's been a lot of talk about, he's signed this player and he's not fit, he's injured, blah, blah, blah. Because he's been there for a couple of months without playing and everyone's going, what's going on? And Fran Sola's been labouring about up front and not really convincing. And finally, they got Toril on the pitch this week for the last half an hour and he scores twice. And as you say, if they can keep him fit, he could really get up to speed now. He could be a massive signing for them because they're in and around the playoffs still, aren't they, Hercules? And they are a big club, and they were certainly, set up this season to get into at least the top 5. And he could be the difference, I think.
Yeah, I think he really can. And again, he is temporarily ex-Real Murcia. I think he was on loan for like 16 games or something like that a couple of years back. But of course, he had to go and celebrate in front of that corner of Real Murcia fans, as you do when it's a big derby like this one down in the Murcia region. And as you say, this win moves Hercules into sort of like the periphery of the playoffs. And if they can keep up momentum or regain momentum under Beto Company, you wouldn't not bet on them getting into the playoffs and having a real shot of going up to Segunda as well with these kind of players. On the other side of this, real concerns for Real Murcia. I'm sure you and Tom have been speaking about this in the last few weeks. There's just something not right there at the moment, isn't there? And, the aspirations of this club when they, put Fran Fernandez on Garden and leave last summer was, successful Basque manager, fill the club with stars. We've brought in players from Sampdoria on loan, a top team. They just look lost. Lost would be the word I'd have to describe them, Liam.
Yeah, it's not good at the moment at all, is it? It's looking really worrying for them. I think they'll probably still have enough to stay up, but that obviously wasn't part of the plan, was it, at the start of the season? Like you say, it was all about probably winning the title, and if not, at least making the top 5. That looks like a really, really long way away right now. Some more headlines from Grupo Uno. I want to start in the Estadio Romano Merida. You won't be surprised to hear. Stunning 4-1 win for Deportivo Guadalajara. Let's not forget, Nick, this was against the team with the best, or joint best, I should say, home record in Grupo Uno, I think, with Baracaldo. Quite incredible. 4th win in 6 games for Juan V. Penalo's team. Unbelievable turnaround. Of course, they're not even out of the bottom 5 yet. There's a long, long way to go. But what an amazing impact this guy has had, and what an amazing set of players he's managed to bring together at this stage, and with very modest means to challenge, to pull off what would be a miraculous escape from where they were 6 weeks ago.
I'm looking at this, Liam. I'm still thinking my 5th place finish for Guadalajara might be on at this rate, because he's doing an excellent job. And like I say, this is no mean feat. This going away to the Estadio Romano in Merida and getting a result, not just a 1-0 win, a statement win. Liam should put the other teams that are in relegation trouble in Grupo Uno on notice as well. One of them could be Arenas de Getxo. However, if they could actually play their games, it might be helpful. Their game against Pontevedra had to be postponed into because one side of the pitch at Fedora, let's not forget, they're not on the wonderful. Think about this, Liam. An all-weather pitch would be good in this part of the world, wouldn't it? When it's raining and it's next to a river and things like that, an all-weather pitch might be the way to go forward. But unfortunately, it was called off because of a flooded pitch. But it didn't stop Baracaldo getting a win, could it?
No, they were, I suppose, were away, weren't they, in Salamanca? So they didn't have quite the same issues with water. But I think their pitch would have held up. But yeah, it's absolutely daft, isn't it? They've moved away from Marbella. They're not allowed to play on the 4G, and yet they can't play games because, surprise, surprise, when it rains heavily and your ground's next to a river, the ground floods because it's not built for this level of football. Never mind. Baracaldo, a great win for them. They've only won twice away all season. This was the second win, actually. And the other was at Celta Fortuna, bizarrely. So they've been some good sides away from them. This is decent. And a couple of golazos in this game as well. The first from Alvaro Peña, and then Iker Peredales from a ridiculous angle right on the byline. He's a right back as well. So got no right to be scoring at all, especially not from that angle. So yeah, good result for them. Really good. And of course, that means they stay in the top 5 because of that. And the only team actually, I think they changed the top 5 is Lugo, unsurprisingly dropping out. I think if you lose a game 4-0 at home and this league is as tight as it is, you're not staying in the top 5, are you, after that? Unfortunately, they've been replaced by Bilbao Athletic, who won 1-0 at Osasuna Promesas and Pontevedra. didn't play, of course, because they were supposed to play in Fadura, and that means that they've slipped to fifth. I think Baracaldo are taking them, and it makes you realise, doesn't it, just how tight it is that now Pontevedra has been a solid top 5 team for quite a while now, and now finding themselves in the last playoff place, and they've got, as usual, about 5 or 6 teams just behind them looking to overtake them. The bottom 5, Nick, though, unchanged, but one significant mover, shall we say?
Yes, and that is Depor that are moved within just 2 points of safety, which is really good for the Madrid-based side. And it's going to be it's getting really tight down there as well, isn't it? With those, I think 4 or 5 teams just above the relegation zone that's still in danger. So, yeah, watch out for the Guadaneta coming up behind you. I must say as well, Liam, someone messaged me on Sunday, or it might have been Saturday or Sunday, can't remember which one. Anyway, do you know there's that one game that's broadcast on, I think it's Teledeportes, where they pick one Primera F game to show to everyone in Spain on free-to-air television. Do you want to guess which game they picked from this weekend that they wanted to show the nation of what Primera F football should be like?
I imagine it involves at least one filial.
It involves 2 filials. It was Bilbao Athletic against Osasuna Promesas. Why would you pick that game? You must know that's not going to be
They showed Celta Fortuna Tenerife, didn't they? Did they? Or did they show? They shouldn't show. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it is bizarre. I mean, to me, the obvious game from this week was Hercules Real Murcia. Yeah, that. I mean, I get that. I suppose, Celta Fortuna Tenerife probably is just about. But for me, in terms of 2 big sides looking to take it next level, for me that would have been the biggest interest of all. But they didn't show it, and no great surprise.
When I got a text it was from Matt Harrison, actually. He went to Barco La Sala in Malaga just before the Malaga game on Sunday, and he said they had Bilbao Athletic against Osasuna Promesas on the telly. I just thought, why?
Especially at Osasuna Promesas, which is probably the worst ground in either division. Just an absolute proper training field, isn't it? Yeah, that's really the image you want to show off. I mean, showing on any TV anywhere in Spain for me is depressing, to be honest. Even if it wasn't the one Teledeporte game, who on earth is showing that? And we love to support Primera F. We'd love to see it on in bars. But that's not one way to showcase this brilliant couple of divisions, is it? Grupo Dos. Somewhere at the top of Grupo Dos, Nick.
Yes, Sabadell carry on their endeavours to be a Segunda club next season. They stay top, but their lead has been cut to 3 points. They can only get a draw 0-0 at Nastic. And again, I don't know if you saw the crowds for this one. It was actually quite good to see how many travelled on. I think it was Friday night, wasn't it? Which is, great to see after work, making what looks like a short trip or sounds like a short trip, but it isn't. It's still, a good, couple 100 kilometres, if I remember rightly.
I think it's a bit less than that, but it's certainly it's certainly over an hour, I think, isn't it? It's not. I mean, I think Sabadell to Tarragona, probably an hour to an hour and a half, I would say. But there might be heavy traffic. It's still a journey. A lot of people wouldn't usually make. So I thought it was a decent crowd. I was pleased about that.
Yeah, and then Atletico Madrileño as well, 1-4-1, which is why that league got cut down to just 3 points. So it's getting really tight at the top of Grupo Uno. The home side hit the bar at 1-0 up and had a very good shot for a penalty, didn't they, Liam? But they had the rebound turned down. Also at the top of Grupo Dos, Europa won again, this time 5-2 against Betis Deportivo at Can Drago. Again, they're now within 4 points of the Sabadell at the top. Mentioned the double for Carlos Gonzalez. There was also a pathetic dive from Danny Perez, wasn't there? But where was the FBS check?
No, there was. That's what annoyed me most of all. There was an FBS check. What on earth was going on here? Danny Perez, embarrassing. Hang your head in shame. He's a Betis Deportivo midfielder, and there's nothing against Filianes here. He just throws himself on the ground. And the reason why I was irritated by this is because, talk about chancing it. Everybody could see it was a dive. Referee booked him. And then, let's not forget that the benches have monitors. They've looked at their tablet or whatever and gone, let's put in a challenge. I'm like, you have to be kidding me. This is embarrassing. You want the referee to go across and look at that again. You want us all to watch again on the slow-mo on the TV pictures. This idiot diving in the box in the most blatant imaginable fashion. And how ridiculous was it as well? Because he could have gone round the keeper and scored, I thought, but he chose to fling himself on the floor. Utterly ridiculous. Only thing that was more ridiculous than this is Pablo Garcia playing for their filial. Utterly absurd. One of the many reasons why we dislike Filiales being in this league. Do you know Pablo Garcia has played in the Europa League for Real Betis this season? He's not just come on for a couple of minutes at the end of the game as well. He's played like from the start for Real Betis in the Europa League. He's played, I think, something like 700 minutes for the first team. I'm sorry, but that is utterly
bizarre,
ridiculous.
isn't it?
What is he
It's
doing?
bizarre.
But surprise, surprise, Betis Deportivo are in the relegation zone. They've obviously got, right, go on then, Pablo, off you go. See if you can single-handedly get them out of there. And no, sorry, absolutely not on for this kind of thing.
Yeah, when I heard the story that he was going to play for Betis Deportivo in the Seville derby against Sevilla Atletico, I was kind of like, oh, that's fun, isn't it? You know, he's a proper Betico, isn't he? He wants to go and stick one on the rivals. This is just daft, and again, sort of shows how it's bad that players like this can drop down into a team. I think Malaga had this a few years ago when Villarreal dropped, I think it was Roman Tuarez or someone like that. I can't quite remember his name now. But he dropped a couple of players down from the first team because they had nothing else to play for in the league and effectively tried to keep Villarreal Bay in the league at Malaga's expense. So it was it's just a daft rule, isn't it? Which is not great. So we'll carry on ignoring them. We don't need to talk about Fidelitas too much because Eldense are joint third with Europa as well after a 4-1 win at Atletico Thadio Kenyo, aka Cádiz Mirandilla B. There's now a 5-point gap to Teruel in fifth. So that sort of like top four is really starting to set itself in stone, isn't it, in Grupo Dos?
Yeah, I think so. I think that top four look a very good bet, obviously, and there's still 10 games to go, I know, but they look a good bet to be. I don't know who's going to be champions, I must admit, but, one of them will be champions and the other three will be in the playoffs, and we'll just see who gets that fifth place. And Teruel, as he's saying, pole position at the moment down the bottom. It's also fairly clear. I know Marbella won in Ibiza, which is quite remarkable, apart from the fact that Ibiza win and lose on alternate weeks consistently, as Tom always says. And so I suppose we should have expected a surprise there. But yeah, they're the only team that won in the bottom five. They're still 9 points from safety. And I think that, realistically themselves and probably Atletico San Lucan and probably Betis Deportivo and Sevilla Atletico 4 to go down. But the fifth team in the relegation zone at the moment, of course, Real Murcia after that defeat. I don't think they'll go down, but my word, that is embarrassing for them, isn't it? Grupo Uno, 3 games to watch this week in Grupo Uno. Take it away with the first one, please, Mr. Bell.
Yes, absolutely. This one is a massive one down the bottom end of Grupo Uno. And as we've been saying to you, if you want to watch some goals recently, tune yourself into the games that play Deportivo Guadalajara. They'll be hosting Talavera on Sunday at 12 o'clock, a proper relegation 6-pointer. The home team will know that if they win, it will really put some daylight between themselves and their opponents, who are currently just a point ahead of them. And it'll also take them out of the bottom five.
They're a point ahead of Talavera, I think, aren't they? So, so they could be 4 points ahead after this, and that's obviously crucial. Another team, you put a little gap between yourselves who are in the bottom five,
Yeah, and they'll also take them out there if Real Aviles Industrial Orense failed to win, which, again, Liam, as you mentioned here, was unthinkable a few weeks ago, wasn't it? Which Real Aviles Industrial is our next game to pick, another relegation 6-pointer. They host Cacereño up in Asturias, another big game down at the bottom. Aviles have just won 1 game in 2026, which, again, when we looked at the work that Danny Vidal was doing a few months ago, they looked like a sure bet for a playoff place, didn't they, Liam? But the fact they've only won 1 in the last 6 games, it really isn't good for them. Cacereño have actually picked up more points on the travels as well, haven't they, Liam? So again, this could be a chance for them to regain some ground in the fight for safety. So let's see if either of these two can scramble their way from the relegation trapdoor. And then last but not least, Lee, 2 sides that are desperate to finish in the top 5, Liam. Racing Club de Ferrol against Baracaldo at 6:15 on Sunday. Ferrol looking to bounce back straight into Segunda. It's not been an easy ask them to do that this year. They've not quite had the same impact that Tenerife have had done. And also Baracaldo, I think, they've kind of been also rans the last couple of seasons, haven't they? So they'll definitely want to go one step further and get themselves into the playoffs moving forward. How about Grupo Dos, Liam? 3 massive games. I can see them on the screen. They look tasty.
Yeah, the first one's a massive game. Another massive game in the Barcelona area, even more in the Barcelona area, this one, actually, because it's Sabadell against Europa, 4:15 on Saturday. That should be an absolute cracker, shouldn't it? I'm really hoping for a decent crowd for this one. Europa have only lost once in Primera Federacion in the 11 games which they played in 2026. They could move to within the point of the league leaders of the win in this one, of course, so 4 points behind. I have to say, Sabadell fans, I've been a bit critical of you in the past in terms of the turnout to watch your team. You've got no excuse not turning out in force for this one. 4:15 on Saturday afternoon. Have your lunch. Get down to the Estadio Nueva Cruz Alta afterwards and get behind your side. I think Europa will bring a decent following to this, and it should be an absolutely cracking game. Straight after that, right down on the south coast, Juventud de Torremolinos against Atlético Sanluqueño, 6:30 on Saturday. It's a must-win game for visitors. They have been better in recent weeks. They've won 3 of the last 6. The 3 they lost were against Sabadell, Atlético Madrileño, and Eldense. So you can't really complain about that, can you? Because ultimately they were never going to win those games, I don't think. But they are 9 points behind Juventud de Torremolinos. They lost the first game 2-0, so they really have to win this one. And even if they do, they'll still be effectively 7 points behind them. There are teams nearer to them that they can catch, but ultimately they might as well try and reel in anyone they can. One of the teams nearer to them in the bottom 5, Real Murcia, obviously probably going to get more points over the remaining games than Atlético Sanluqueño. It's still a very tall order for them. They might as well chase it. It's particularly a tall order, I think, because Juventud de Torremolinos are not in bad form at the moment. They're unbeaten 5. And realistically, if they win this one, they've then got double figures points advantage over Marbella, over Sevilla Atlético, over Betis Deportivo, and also over Atlético Sanluqueño. So, they then put 4 teams that really can't get past them in the remainder of the season. So, big game for them as well, isn't it?
It really, really is. Like you say, two sides that you would say we expected to be down there. But, again, props to Juventud de Torremolinos. They're showing, a real will and a real fight to stay in this league, despite the, the problems that they had, especially at the start of the season. So, yeah, this is a massive opportunity for them to, I don't want to use the word cement, Liam, but it's a pretty good, setting mortar, isn't it, for staying in Primera for next season, which is a massive shout for them. Club going from strength to strength. Eldense Ibiza, your next one, Liam?
Yeah, Sunday at 12, this one. I mean, Ibiza would, of course, have expected, as we say, to have beaten Marbella last weekend and would have gone into this one if they had done, with a realistic chance of getting pretty close to Eldense. But they aren't now going to be able to do so. I think they're 9 points behind them. So, that's not great. They could have been within 3 points, of course, if they'd won last weekend and then gone to Elda and won this weekend. And now that's not a possibility. So they've just got to try and put pressure on those top 5. And, of course, not the easiest place to try and do it, because Eldense have got the best home form in Grupo Dos. And so, it's time for Ibiza, the inconsistently consistent. Sorry, I meant the other way around. Consistently inconsistent Ibiza, to do something inconsistent again in beating a side that they've probably got no right to beat, judging by Eldense's home form so far this season. So, I think it'd be a decent game. I think this week, I'm not expecting 3-0 nils. I have to say, I would be very disappointed if we end up with 3-0 nils from those 6 games. So massive games, and hopefully some goals to enjoy as well.
Yes, I imagine that all those games have got the potential to be goals galore, especially in Grupo Dos, Liam. So we'll keep an eye on those at the weekend. And if you want to keep an eye on any more news from Primera, make sure to go and follow us on social medias. Liam does a great job of sharing all the goals, all the news, and things like that on there as well. And also, Liam, I have to say to you as well, I don't know if we've recognised this just yet, but it's just popped into my mind. It's our El Pozo birthday this week, because I believe I've just celebrated El Partido's birthday, and then the same week we did our first El Pozo episode as well. So, happy El Pozo birthday, Liam.
We are indeed a year old, aren't we? Fantastic and brilliant to have so many of you supporting us over that year, both in terms of listening to our podcast and also basically following our stuff on social media and liking it and reposting it, and just generally making us feel like there are people out there listening to us and as loving of Primera football as we are. So thank you for all your support. Lots more to come over the next year, I'm sure. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week, and we look forward to telling you all about next weekend's Primera football in about a week's time.
Absolutely. We'll catch you then. We'll see you soon. Hasta luego.